Good evening. My name is Jennifer McCready. I'm chairman of the board, and I'm thrilled you're all here. It's our first dose of community moviegoers for such a long time, and I welcome you with all my heart. This has been a very difficult film festival for me because there were so many wonderful films that I wanted to see. And obviously you can't see them all. Many are running at the same time as the one I wanted to see. However, I did make some selections. The first one is, of course, Joe Wright's film, my favorite director, and that's Tonight. And we're very thrilled to have him here. He has not let us down ever, always shows up for his films and often brings a star. So I'm very, very thrilled he's here. Not our darkest hour. Anyway, the next choice I made was Dune, mainly because I really enjoy Timothée Chalamet, who is making great strides. And also, I know that my family knows that I'm not really into hi-fi and sci-fi and anything like that. So I think, look, there's life in the old girl. She's moving ahead. And I think that really shows them. As you may know, Dune is going to be playing again. I think it's Thursday next week, but there is a chance if you couldn't get tickets that you can now get a couple. I'd like to talk about Zoe and Mark, who in these difficult times went to extraordinary measures to bring us and choose wonderful films. Zoe is very, very bright, very resourceful, and Mark is beloved too by everyone. So I hope you enjoy the festival. I know I'll be thinking of you and hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I'm Zoe Elton. It's so great to be here, but you'll have to sort of forgive me because I haven't done one of these opening night things for a couple of years. I'm a bit out of practice. But I know that you are a very forgiving audience. But I would like to thank our sponsor for opening night, Project Number 9. Big thank you to Project Number 9. You'll also notice that one of the things that we're doing this year that's new is we've created strands with thematic strands of films at the festival. We're hoping that you will use this as a resource and discover films that you might not discover otherwise. Tonight's strand is Heart. And that also has a sponsor, which is Grateful Dog. So thanks to Grateful Dog. And I have one other group of people that I'd actually really, really like to acknowledge. There's been so much reinvention in the world of film festivals. Last year was like nothing we'd ever anticipated we would ever do. This year, we learned something from last year, but we had to pretty much reinvent all over again. Not least of which were the people who are the theater operations folks. They are having to deal with COVID protocols, reduced seating in our theaters, making sure that we all get to see films safely. So I want to give a big shout out to our theater operations team, especially Caitlin Ryan, who took give them some applause, give them some love. Caitlin, who runs our theatre ops, I think took it rather seriously when somebody was wishing her luck and said break a leg. She actually broke her ankle last Friday. But nonetheless, she has been turning up to keep the team inspired. So big shout out and thanks to her as well. But really, tonight, it's about Joe Wright. And Joe, come and join us.
Hello, everyone. Hello, good, thank you, good, hello.
Joe, welcome back to Mill Valley Film Festival, and thanks for being, such a supporter of us and bringing us so many amazing films, beginning with Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that?
I'm going to sit down.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to sit down for
I
that.
may continue to stand up a little
let's stand
bit.
at the bar.
Yeah, right.
This was about the first film festival I'd ever been to when I brought Pride and Prejudice here all those many years ago. Jennifer, I think you were here. No, that was the last film. I'm talking about the first film. You were a slip of a girl when we bought the first film. You're sitting very close. Are you all right there? Okay. Yeah, no, okay, good. No, I mean for the film, not for me. Okay, good. Sorry.
I think you brought Donald Sutherland that time.
I brought Donald Sutherland that time, and Keira
Yeah.
Knightley came, and Rosamund Pike, and we had a wonderful time and got really, really drunk.
As one does.
As one does at Mill Valley Film Festival, that's right, yeah. Mark took us out, and I ended up in a blues bar with him at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I think he still talks about that, actually, Joe.
That's nice.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. I mean, so Pride and Prejudice, you also came back with Anna Karenina, now with Cyrano. You seem to have a thing about classics. Is that true or not?
Yeah, I think I don't make films about what I know. I make films about what I want to know. I'm dyslexic, and I grew up in a part of London that was, there wasn't a lot of money around. Education was terrible. No one, so I didn't get much of an education. So I see my career as an extension of my education, really. And by making these films based on, Jane Austen or Tolstoy or so on, Rostand, I get to learn, and I guess that's why I do that.
Well, you must be learning in 3 dimensions, because the kinds of films that you've been making are often really sort of rooted in the heart of the character. But in terms of cinema, you often, you really stretch yourself. I mean, you spread your wings. Technologically, I mean, as well as everything else. Is there any, I'm thinking like of Atonement and, that extraordinary tracking shot that probably will come back to haunt you for the rest of your life. But wondering whether there are things that you learnt to do in previous films that have informed the way that you made Cyrano. I mean, like a tracking shot or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a strange thing happens. You kind of think, oh, I've really learned a lot on this film, and then you start the next one and you have to relearn everything again. It's strange. You're back to somehow being a complete novice. But then on set, you remember. I guess what it is you start to trust yourself a little bit more, and that's useful.
Yeah.
And you're not quite operating in such a state of fear.
Right.
That's also useful. And in a way, you can let go of control a little bit more. If you're not operating from a place of fear, you can let go of control. And the amazing thing about letting go of control is you find that control comes back to you. And that's a sort of wonderful and strange paradox.
Yeah. So with Cyrano, how did the film come about for you? I mean, obviously it's a story that's been told in many different ways.
Yeah, I've always loved the story.
Yeah.
I loved it as a teenager when I saw the Gerard Depardieu version, and
Right.
I identified with Cyrano being a kind of like forlorn, loveless teenager, odd and unworthy of love and affection, I felt, and the nose to me was a perfect symbol of everything I kind of felt about myself. And then Hayley Bennett invited me to see her in a very rough workshop production of Erica Schmidt's adaptation. It was at a theatre called the Goodspeed Theatre in Connecticut. There are about 120 seats.
So Erica Schmidt is the screenwriter for this film.
Yes, yeah. She wrote it originally as a stage production.
Right.
I saw the workshop of that, and Peter was playing Cyrano and Haley was playing Roxanne, and I was really rocked by this amazing idea that Cyrano could be Pete, or could be any of us, and we didn't have to have the nose to be able to tell that story. It was more about his own inner feelings of self-worth. And so I first asked Haley's permission if I could adapt it, and she gave me her blessing. So I went to Erica and Pete and asked them, and that was the beginning of the process. We spent a couple of years adapting it, and then on I think it was the 28th of June 2020, I felt we, having been sat on arse for 4 or 5 months, starved of human connection, I felt we were ready to do it. So I called, and essentially that's what the film is about. It's about human connection, our need for human connection, and often our failure to connect with other people.
Right.
So I called Eric Fellner at Working Title, and I said, okay, we're ready. And he said, you're crazy. The world is shut down. No one is making anything. And I said, come on, give
really
me...
people weren't making it.
No one was doing anything.
Every
and
set
insurance was the problem. How do you insure
Yeah.
a film?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He said, you've got 5% chance of ever getting this made, or now. And I said, great, 5%, that's fantastic, I'll take it. And slowly that number built up, and we took it to MGM, and Mike DeLuca, who is new to his post, said, I am betting on a future for theatrical cinema, because if I don't bet for it, I'm betting against it. And I found that really inspiring. So he said yes. We gathered together a international crew and cast, about 350 people, American, British, Italian, French, German, Belgian, Danish, Canadian, and we went to the island of Sicily, and we created a bubble there, and rather like a theatre company, a lot of extras or dancers, maybe had to double up characters and so on, and under those circumstances we made the film.
And I think it's about time we saw it.
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry, I've gone on and on.
No.
Q&A.
That was a great prelude to the film. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. So this is a great way to get us back into the theatre and back on screen. And I love that you were saying that he was betting on cinema. So perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Have a great
for being
screening.
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of Cyrano, Joe Wright, back to the stage of the Raffel.
Come on then, Mark.
How you doing all the way over there?
I'm all right over there.
Yeah, are you in a different state?
Hello. Hello.
Hello. This is such a beautiful film.
Thank you.
I've seen it 3 times, and I've cried every time.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to cry during the credits, actually. But please, tell us where and how did you make this film? During, my understanding is during a pandemic.
Yeah. Well, like everyone, you know, I was sat at home, and we'd been developing the screenplay for 2 or 3 years, and I was sat at home and had very little contact, human contact, for 4 or 5 months, and it was June 28th, 2020, when I finally felt we had the script in a good shape. And so I called up Eric Fellner at Working Title, and I said, okay, now is the time, we've got to make this now. We need to make a film about people connecting and failing to connect, and the importance of human connection. And he said, you're mad. That's never going to happen. The world is shut down and there's a global pandemic on. You've got 5% chance, he said. I said, 5%. Yeah. I said, 5%, great, I'll take it. That's great. 5%'s great, you know. And so we went and we raised the money. MGM amazingly came through. And so my idea was that we would go to the island of Sicily, which had had a very low COVID rate. And given that it was an island, you know, a lot of the national income is from tourism, and there were no tourists. And this little town called Noto in the south east of the island was pretty much deserted. And so we gathered together a group of about 350 filmmakers, artists, actors, and extras from all over Europe. It was a very international thing, and that was important to me because of this weird situation we've got going on in the UK called Brexit. And so I wanted to bring the Europeans together to make the movie. And then obviously Americans and Canadians and what have you. And we created a bubble in this town and made this movie. And it was an extraordinary experience making a movie in those circumstances, because it really brought everyone together, and it was a real labour of love for everybody. I mean, firstly, people were glad to be able to put food on the table, which a lot of freelance, you know, filmmakers weren't able to do at the time, and actors and small bit part actors and so on were really struggling financially. So everyone was, you know, excited to be working and excited to be in contact with other human beings and making a film about the importance of love, really, you know. It felt like a good time to make a love story.
Certainly was a good time. And I mentioned that at the top of the show, that this seemed to be like a perfect film for the pandemic of what we were all experiencing as one, but not in any traditional way. Yeah. But had I want to ask you this, because I know a little bit about your background. I noticed in the beginning of the film there were puppets, and then in the closet there were puppets. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Well, as you know, Mark, my parents were puppeteers, and they ran a puppet theatre, the first purpose-built puppet theatre in London. And my dad, who passed away 30 years ago now, more, made those puppets that are in the closet at the beginning. He made them in 1948. And I just felt like I wanted to... I've been on a strange journey, Mark. You know, I've been like starting with Pride and Prejudice, which we brought here, and we had a great time, and that was amazing. I remember being in this room. And then Atonement, and then I kind of have tried on different disguises almost in my filmmaking, and I really wanted to make a film that somehow returned to my source, you know, returned to where it all started for me, which is the puppet theatre, and it's kind of the most. I wanted to make a film that was devoid of any irony or cynicism. and that's something that spoke just from the heart, and be brave enough to put my heart out there like that, you know, because there's a fuck of a lot of cynics around, as we all know. Excuse language, people. The world seems to be getting more and more cynical and ironic, you know.
And dangerous.
And dangerous. And so I wanted to make a film that somehow took me back to that puppet theatre in Islington. Sorry, I've just realised it's my dad's birthday. He was born in 1906. He'd be very old today. Strange music playing. So I wanted to make a film that was somehow alluded to Dad and the puppet theatre and the child in me before cynicism and irony.
Well, you succeeded. It's just an incredible film, and it opens in December. Mm-hmm. And everybody here is going to tell all their friends too, right?
Good.
So were you near the volcano that was erupting?
Yeah. So we shot everything in this town, Noto, as I say, for the first part of the movie, and it has this very, as you saw, a kind of romantic feeling to it. And then I wanted a very strong contrast when we cut to the battle. And there was Mount Etna, you know, as you know, on Sicily, which is a live volcano. But it was fine because the volcano hadn't erupted for 30 years, and they never got snow, they said, on the volcano before February, and we were there in December. So it was like, great, okay, we can shoot up there. It's got this amazing black sand, volcanic sand, and the red costumes against the black are going to look incredible. And we decided to shoot at 16,000 feet above sea level, so the air was very thin and no one could actually breathe. But that was fine, and it was like vertiginous sort of slopes, so you couldn't actually walk because as soon as you tried to move, you just slid down the volcano. But it was all going to be fine. And then the heavens opened and dumped 2 meters of snow in about 3 days, a week prior to shooting. So we had to completely reconceive the whole thing in about 5 days and rebuild the set. And the crane was already built, and that got snowed in. And so we had to shoot the whole thing on sticks and, you know, on a tripod, and had no flashy camera equipment up there at all. And it was the most challenging 10 days shoot of my life, certainly. But then on the last day, the actual thing erupted. And we were literally chased off the volcano. They say, and you know, they call Etna, they call her, and she is a goddess. And the goddess was just pissed and wanted us off her back, I think. So that was interesting. And we literally ran down the volcano as it was, you know, erupting, spitting lava at us.
And do you have that on film, or we could see that?
No, stupidly, we just, well, not stupidly, I mean, we just ran. And 2 days later, our entire set was a different shape. I mean, the entire landscape changed, and the set was buried under lava. And we took off, you know, the next day, it was like just before Christmas, and we took off on the plane at night, and you could look out the window, and there was just this red burning eye looking at us. And we felt very lucky to have gotten out, really, yeah.
Yeah, you were lucky. So you were cooped up in the house and you wanted to get out, so you figured you'd take 350 people, go to an island with a volcano and make a movie.
put like that, Mark. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was hearing it right.
Yeah.
I think everybody would not forgive us if we didn't talk about the brilliant cast and the history of this film. It is truly an amazing cast, and everything about it is so gorgeous, and we could spend so much time talking about the staging and the depth of what you're shooting and what was happening in the air and in the back and the front, and it was just fantastic. But the actors here, and I don't know if everybody knows the origin of the film. If you want to speak to that a little bit.
So Hayley Bennett, who plays Roxanne, invited me to go and see a workshop, sort of a workshop production, rough workshop production that they were doing up in Connecticut. There's a little theatre there called the Goodspeed Theatre. And the theatre seats like 120 people. And Erica Schmidt had written this musical adaptation with her husband, Peter Dinklage, playing Cyrano. And immediately I thought, what a brilliant idea that is. And I went and saw it, and that night I was really rocked by... I knew the story well. You know, I'd been in love with the Depardieu version when I was a kid. I think anyone who kind of felt odd and out of place and unworthy of love or affection, as you know, I certainly did as a teenager, I think would have identified with Cyrano. But he was big and handsome, really. He just had this rubber nose on his face, and he could take that off and go home and, you know, be a hit with the ladies. Whereas there was something so authentic and raw about Pete playing that role. And he made a very interesting distinction to me. He said it wasn't about the fact that for him Cyrano had a low sense of self-esteem. It was perhaps more that he didn't trust others to be able to love him. He didn't believe that other people had the depth to love him. And I thought that was really interesting. He had a very interesting take on it. And Hayley was extraordinary. And so I asked Hayley first if I could approach Pete and Erica. And she gave me her blessing, so I went that night and approached them and said, shall we make a movie? Erica had never written a screenplay before. I don't know if she'd actually ever read one before. So she told me that. So we embarked on a development process that took a couple of years, and we worked very closely with the National. Bryce and Aaron and Matt and Corinne, who wrote the music and lyrics for the film.
The music was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, good. There's a level of intimacy to their music, which I thought would work even better on film than it did on stage. And I wanted to try and create all the singing's live. They're all singing live on camera. There's no lip sync to and so I wanted to create this kind of almost naturalistic musical whereby the dialogue and the dramatic scenes would seamlessly move into the songs. They'd just take a breath and, start singing. And that it would feel very kind of natural, and that the cracks in their voices and the breaths in the wrong places would the faults would give us the emotion as much as the perfection of, the right note at the right time.
And it does. It moves the film and is extremely natural. And, don't get me wrong, I loved Oklahoma and Carousel and
Absolutely,
Seven Brides and Seven Brothers, but this is works beautifully for this story.
I wanted to be close to them, I wanted to be intimate.
Certainly was. Yeah. So Halle was just magnificent in this film. It was. What did she take away from the play that she either embraced for the film or did differently?
I think both their performances in the film are very, very different from the play. I think they had to I tried to get them to unlearn everything that they'd done on stage, deconstruct it all, and then rebuild it. That's not to say that what they did on stage wasn't brilliant, it was, but it's a very, very different medium. And I wanted to kind of simplify it and strip them both away, so that they were standing sort of raw and emotionally naked before each other. And so it was really about letting go of stuff. But it's also, I mean, there's always about that. Directing actors, there's a technical side to it and a kind of theoretical side, and you investigate the text and all of that kind of stuff. But I find more than anything, it's about getting actors to drop their defenses. And every actor has a defense. As soon as as soon as you're performing, there's an element of defense that goes up, and those are often expressed in kind of funny habits. James McAvoy, I'm sure you wouldn't mind me saying that James McAvoy had this kind of defensive mechanism where he kind of stuck his jaw out a little bit, like like that, and chippy, kind of Scottish thing maybe, and it took me a while to notice it, and then when I did notice it and got him to stop doing that, suddenly the open, raw emotion came out of him, and that, I think, was why his performance in Atonement worked so well. So yeah, it was about that, really. It was about getting them to stop defending themselves, lay down your arms and allow the audience in, allow us in, allow us to be close with you, allow that connection. Yeah, I think that's what it was about.
So connection is a strong part of the work and strong part of the motivation for this film.
I think what I've come to realize is that I think all drama is about connection or failure to connect. I'm not very good at connecting with people, and so all my work is about trying to connect, or stories about people trying to connect and failing to connect, and then if you want a happy ending, they do connect. But then if you carried the film on, they'd probably disconnect again the next day.
Well, we could save that discussion for another time.
A happy ending depends on where you end it.
Well, tell me how it was to be working with the National musicians from the National in terms of this film, the process.
It was really exciting. I really like working with, I did it with the Chemical Brothers and Hannah. I really like working with musicians or even actors or whoever who have never done it before. Because again, they don't have those kind of go-to habits, So it was a whole new world to them, and they're kind of, they were discovering how to do it as they went along, and I could kind of guide them to surprising sort of conclusions, but also they could teach me about how to unlearn stuff. We all end up with these things that we somehow cling on to, and they're fairly useless or redundant, and so they could teach me how to unlearn stuff.
There were some new songs that were put in there as well?
Yeah, a couple, and also we moved the songs around a lot. And we kind of shaped them. We cut a lot of songs as well. There were more songs. If a song didn't earn its place, then it wasn't going to be in the movie. But also things like Every Letter, which is the song that that the three of them sing together and the letters fall down and all that business.
Beautiful.
It's a little kitsch, but you know. That song in the stage version was a solo sung by Roxanne, and it actually came during the war sequence. And I didn't think that worked there, but I really liked the song, so we retooled the song to the earlier position, and then I kind of liked this idea of a sort of ménage à trois vocal that without the characters ever actually being physically in the same space, but somehow the song wrapped them together in a kind of kinetic, cinematic metaphor. Oh, thank you. I wanted to make it really hot, actually.
Well,
I wanted to make Pete hot too. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I remember there were people, predominantly men, prior to shooting the film, who went, yeah, but people aren't going to believe that, are they? I mean, like, he's like little fella and she's like, I mean, they're not going to believe it, are they? And I was kind of like, okay, this is really interesting, being faced with these preconceived sort of horrible ideas, you know, about what sexual attraction is, or romantic attraction is. And it was really interesting to be faced with that and go, all right, no, my challenge of this movie is to make people believe that these two people are meant for each other and that they are in love with each other and they want to go to bed together. Yeah. Not just like they want to sit and read books together, do you know what I mean? But these two people are going to have a physical, romantic life together, and that was, or could have had. And that was a really wonderful challenge.
A very successful challenge in reminding people that how important love is, and the movie has a lot of contrast between love and brute force and power. Even if you take that analogy of I couldn't believe that, you know, the two of them would get together in a romantic relationship, then you're dealing with the sword play as well, which was really fun and interesting and gets one to believe that, yes, he can take on 10 men, 100 men.
Yeah, yeah. Without, like, I can't remember what it was, but without necessarily it being about his height. You know, they're not just kind of fighting gags that are about, oh look, he can duck under someone. Right. Yeah. But they're fighting gags that actually express his prowess, his strength. You know, we have a fantastic fight choreographer called Eunice Earthheart, and she's a lunatic from Liverpool, and she's really scrappy. She actually started out on Gladiator and won. And she's this amazing scrappy fight choreographer, and all these men are just terrified of her. She is hard, man, and she has this kind of scrappy, wonderful sort of imagination, and so she choreographed all the fights.
Wow, beautiful. I
have trouble with stuntmen normally. I'm not very kind of stuntman-y, so to have a woman in that role is great.
I wanted to read something that you said, and the story reminds me of the importance of human community, especially at a time when we were so starved for that during the lockdowns. I mentioned at the head of the show here that, you know, this pandemic means to myself, and I think a lot of people, how important movie-going is and a great film, and that it's been proven, at least to me, not that we have accelerated ourselves to having the end of the movie business in theaters, but just how important it is. But it's nothing without the right films. And I heard you talk about the the great aspects of when the great actors come together, the roles that we're meant to play. And I think this movie plays a role, a different role, in terms of helping us get out of this pandemic, appreciating beauty, love, and art. So I want to thank you for that, my friend.
Well, thank you for having this festival as well, you know. You know, there's something, can I say one more thing?
You can say as much as you like.
There's something scientifically that happens when we collectively get together, which is that, and we watch a movie or listen to a piece of music in an audience, is that, and it's been scientifically proved, is that our heartbeats fall into sync, and that our heartbeats all start beating at the same time. And I missed our unified heartbeats, you know.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Joe. It's just such a pleasure to have you back here again, especially with this incredible film. And this is a good thing.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy festival.
Thank you.